Welcome, everyone. For those of you joined at home, welcome as well. I realize you can't see the audience, so you just have to assume there are the 500 people that I want to be sure you are here with us tonight for our in-person / virtual author visit with mystery novelist Linda Lovely. And we're really grateful for Linda making the trip down here to the Lowcountry, a place she used to call home. It's very nice to welcome her back to Beaufort tonight. Linda is here representing a brand new book with Neighbors Like These, first novel in her HOA Mystery Series. Linda is the author of 9 mysteries and suspense novels, for which she has been recognized with nominations for numerous awards, ranging from the RWA's Golden Heart for Romantic Suspense to Thriller Nashville's Silver Falcon for Best Cozy Mystery. She also belongs to a number of writers' organizations, many of which are good friends to us here at the Conroy Center. Mystery Writers of America, International Thriller Writers, and the South Carolina Writers Association, which has a chapter that meets in this very room twice a month as well. Linda and her husband now live in South Carolina upstate, but our beloved Lowcountry was their home for a dozen years. So please welcome Linda Lovely.
Jonathan, nice to be back in the Lowcountry. My new book, with Neighbors Like These, is set in the Lowcountry because I live in an HOA in the upcountry, and I didn't want any of the people dying to recognize themselves. So, but a lot of people, the first question they ask me is, Linda Lovely your real name? And the answer is yes. However, I have been married to Tom Hooker for 45 years. I was already writing as Linda Lovely and had the byline, and Linda Lovely Hooker just did not seem to be a good option. So those are not the types of books that I intend to write. So I stayed with Linda Lovely, and I did, in fact, make one of my characters named Bree Hooker in another series to at least give Tom another hooker that he could root for. So. I was a journalism major in college and have always written for a living. And I started out in public relations and marketing and pretty much stayed there. I've probably written, I don't know, hundreds of feature magazine articles, which was much of what I did. And I was we had just moved to Fripp Island, and I was doing some freelance work for a Hilton Head advertising agency. And long roundabout story, I was asked to do an As Told To book. And I had always thought about writing a book, but never really wondered if I could finish one. So I decided, yes, I would take the contract, and it was an agreement that we would split royalties. And I did tons of interviews, and they flew me places where they had lived. And so I could get some on-site perspective. And I wrote the first 5 or 6 chapters of the book and outlined it. And we had a New York agent that was very interested. And my clients were suddenly paid off by their family not to write the book. So I learned at that point that I really, if I was going to put the effort into writing a book, and I had now discovered that I thought I could, that I was going to have total control over it, which meant that I was going to write fiction from then on and not try any As Told To books. But I have no regrets about the experience because it really prompted me to go ahead, and I actually enrolled at the University of South Carolina, Beaufort in a fiction writing course. And that was a real eye-opener too. If you've written nonfiction all your life, you have a lot of craft to learn in order to switch from nonfiction to fiction. But the one thing that all of those years writing feature magazine articles did for me is I knew how to research. And a lot of people, and I did a program for the Pat Conroy Literary Center last week on why do research if you're writing fiction. And you get so much more if you talk with the people that are in the professions and fields that you're looking at, instead of just reading things and you don't get those little incidents that you might otherwise get. So I had decided in this book that the heroine is a Coast Guard investigator retiree who lives on a boat at the Beaufort Marina. And I have never been in the Coast Guard, and I decided that I should really learn more about what her capabilities would be. I usually try in my books to make sure that my heroines, and they all are heroines, every book has a different heroine maybe, but or a series, but I want to make sure that they have skills that make it logical for them to solve the mysteries and take care of themselves. So I went on Facebook and I looked for retiree Coast Guard groups. And then I went down and I found the names of women that belonged to retiree Coast Guard groups and sent messenger notes to them. And then ended up interviewing them and learning a lot about what it was really like for women who had retired to have served in the Coast Guard the same years perhaps that my heroine had. The series that I wrote just before this, I had a lot of fun writing, and I also had a lot of fun researching that, but it was a cozy mystery series, humorous, that is set in the upcountry. And it's set on a goat farm. So I actually did goat yoga as part of my research, and that was interesting. But the heroine in that was in her early 30s. And I was finding it harder and harder to write young, much younger than me characters. So I decided for this book that I wanted to go back to having a character that was 50. And it's not that I don't remember what it was like to be 30, I do. But it's just that the world is so different for the 30-year-old today in how they've grown up with cell phones, smartphones and internet and different things. And their experiences are so different from what mine were when I was 30. The emotional experiences may be the same, but I found it more of a challenge trying to write them. So I think from now on, my characters will always be 50 and above. But I, again, have had a lot of fun doing the research on all of the books that I've written. If I were speaking to writers, I would probably tell you not to do what I have done, and that is to skip around in genres. All of mine are mystery and suspense, but I started out with two traditional mysteries. Then the publisher went out of business, and I jumped into romantic suspense and wrote romantic suspense. And then I decided that I wanted to write a historical suspense in my mother's honor, set in 1938. So I skipped to historical suspense. Then I did a cozy series with another publisher that is the Goat series. And now I've got this, which is that traditional mystery series. And, you know, they always advise you to pick what you're going to do, make a name for yourself in that niche, and then keep going with it. But I think a lot of us who write, we're doing it for our enjoyment. And so I have no regrets about where I have jumped around and what I have done, because it's been so much fun. And I've really enjoyed doing the different kinds of books that I've done. Again, on going back to the research part and the fun of it, you have an opportunity to ask questions of people that otherwise they might look at you askance. I decided in one of my books that I wanted to kill somebody on a golf course. So I called the golf maintenance facility at Clemson University, and I said, now what piece of golf kill someone? And, you know, they had a good laugh, but then they also told me what kind, and then I went out and drove one. So you can have a lot of fun doing the research. And some writers are outliners and some are seat of the pantsers, and I'm one of the seat of the pantsers. I usually have a good idea of what the theme of the book is, who the villain is, and who the main character is, and I just start writing. And if you're doing that, then you may have to go back and revise and change things and what have you. But for me, that's part of the fun, is to see where the story leads me. And as I do research and learn more, where it's going to take me. So I have a lot of fun doing the writing that way. I know we have at least one writer here. I'm not sure whether we have, and Jonathan, you're a writer. I don't know if there are other writers listening, but one of the things I would also highly recommend is to have critique partners, and also to join writers organizations. Jonathan mentioned that I belong to several, and you find your tribe, you find the people that enjoy doing the same things that you do. And if you're down and find that you're having problems with a section, you can talk with them about it and they don't think you're nuts, and will help you get over the hump. And you reciprocate by doing the same for them, and you make lifelong friends that way. So it's part of the joy of writing when you do belong to writers groups. And the ones that Jonathan mentioned, all of them, well, except for the South Carolina Writers Association is state, but the others are all either national or international. So you can go to conventions and meet people from all over the country that are writing different types of books. And I went to Killer Nashville a week ago, and I was seated in the book signing area, and the author next to me was transgender. And it gave me an opportunity to talk with somebody that was transgender that I had never had that opportunity before. So you end up having a lot of different experiences that you might not have if you just stayed in your shell and didn't belong to, writers organizations. And going to, of course, there haven't been many live conventions or conferences in a while, but again, those are great for craft and for meeting people. I really would like you folks to ask me what questions you have, and then I can sort of talk about what you're most interested in.
I have one question for you about your research. Did you learn how to write a combinder?
You'll have to read that book to see.
No, I read it.
Oh.
That's why I was wondering.
Oh, no, this was another book. This was the golf course one, was where I went out and rode the machinery. That was but I did grow up in Iowa.
Ah.
So I was not unfamiliar with with those machines. So
That sounds terrifying, except the fact that they exist.
Dee?
Linda, I know you wrote historical mysteries,
Yeah.
and as you know, so did I, but did you find it harder to write or to research the historical versus the contemporary?
Well, as I said, I wrote that one for my mother, and Mom was 40 when I was born. So she was a young woman in 1938. And she had told me a lot of stories about how difficult it was for a young woman at that time. Mom was never accused of murder like my heroine, but other than that, they shared a lot of traits. They both operated comptometers, which was a forerunner of the computer.
Oh.
And it had like a braille on the keys that they didn't have to look at them. They could tell what numbers there were to do bank balances and do tabulations. And it's set in my hometown, which is Keokuk, Iowa. And Keokuk, always the social event of the year, all the way through my high school years, was the street fair. So I knew I wanted to set it in a street fair because they had had street fairs in Keokuk, Iowa since I think it was 1880s. And I knew that they had had one in 1938. So I went to the public library in Keokuk and I talked with the librarians there, another wonderful group of people. And I went through all of the newspaper reports for the time that the street fair was in town. And it had everything in terms of which acts were performing and what the weather was. And it turned out that it was a freak storm and it was a flooding of the Mississippi River, which never happens that time of year. This was in September. So that gave me a whole different plot turn when I found out that that flooding had taken place. And at the same time, I was reading about they had just discovered other caves near the Hannibal caves, Mark Twain caves. And I went, ooh, well, this could be interesting too. So, you know, you find things and then you think about ways that you can bring them into the plot. But I think one of the most fun things about doing the research is I still have a lot of friends in Keokuk. And they found me some individuals who were in their 90s that I could talk with. And one of the women that I spoke with was a young girl and in 1938. But she said, we went to the library, my sister and I, all the time. And she said, we would walk to the back of the library and open the window because there was a red light district behind the library and we wanted to see what lingerie they hung on the line. So this is the stuff that you can't find, you know, in history books. And one of the gentlemen that I interviewed told about his dad going to the gambling houses that were operating back then. So you can get a lot of personal sort of anecdotes that you can tailor to your plot and fit in. But actually, in some ways, the historical was easier to research because I had picked a specific 2-week period that I wanted it to happen during. And I could look at all kinds of things. And there were, at the time, the politicians were also coming to the street fair to make speeches. So I could go and look at all of their speeches that they were making back then. So it was really, I think if you, on a historical, if you're talking about something that spans like 3 years in World War II, you're going to have a lot more research than if you pick a time period that you can just look at a month or 2 weeks or whatever and see what happened day to day during that time. So it was fun. And the other thing that's fun is that you know that you don't have to worry about libel. So you can do what you want with the characters and, you know, nobody's going to claim that it's them.
And isn't that learning so much about, and that's another part of the fun part of it is learning things you never knew before.
Yeah.
And when you learn those things and you introduce them into your book, oh wow, that's a good plot twist. Like you said,
Yeah.
That's the best part about being a pantser.
Exactly, yeah. I never would have planned to put a flood into the story until I did the research and found out that there was one then. And I never would have planned on putting caves in it until I looked and saw that that was when this other cave was discovered. So yeah, that's the fun, is being able to be fluid and go with what you find. And the same is true in, I guess it was the 3rd book in my Bree Hooker series, which is the goat farm series. I had decided there is a goat farm near where I live. So I had been going there fairly regularly and they had started offering goat yoga classes. So I talked to one of my critique partners into going with me. And had a great time and decided I was going to incorporate it, but I decided I ought to look online and at other places that were doing goat yoga and what kind of comments people were making. So I went online and I found comments from someone who thought that goat yoga was devil worship.
No matter.
And I went, ooh. This gives me another possibility for, you know, a sort of sidebar plot twist with someone that has decided that goat yoga is devil worship. How they came up with that, I have no idea. But anyway, you can find things that take you in different directions and are lots of fun. So. Any questions from you about plot? We were talking earlier before.
Well, actually, my back is killing me, and I was thinking about how wonderful goat yoga would be.
Well, goat yoga has a lot more to do with goats than it does with yoga.
What do you do with group yoga?
Well, there's a yoga instructor and she indeed does tell you what kind of poses and whatever, but they let the little baby goats out. And they're sort of jumping around you and, you know, they're eating your shoelaces. So it's sort of, the theory is that this is one with nature. The yoga and the experience, interaction with the animals brings you closer to nature. On my website, if you look, there's one picture, there's one goat that's eating my tag on the back of my shirt and another one that's working on my foot, but it was lots of fun. So it was very enjoyable. And also goat fudge is really good.
Oh, is it made with goat's milk?
Yeah, yeah. So the goat farm that's near us, they make, you know, all of the regular cheeses, but they also do fudge.
Mm.
It's good stuff. So,
Linda, when you create a new series like this one, for example, how do you sort of conceptualize that beyond one individual book? Do you identify settings or characters or just parameters, a set of like-minded characteristics that are going to be throughout the series? What approach do you take?
well, I have lived in 4 homeowner associations and I have a number of friends that live in homeowner associations. And I have heard so many stories about homeowner associations that I thought, oh, there are lots of possibilities for conflict here. So that was the beginning. And then I decided, where would I set it? And I thought the Lowcountry is perfect, not because I think there's more conflict in the Lowcountry, but because there are so many different kinds of communities here. So my heroine works for a gentleman that owns a homeowner association management company. So he manages multiple HOAs. So this gives you the chance to have different characters appear in the different HOAs that are around. It gives you a chance to have different kinds of homeowner associations, like some are individual homes and very high end. Then you have condos, you have 55+ communities. So you have all kinds of different possibilities for your secondary characters that are going to come into a plot. And I, just like the heroine, I wanted to make sure that she had investigative capabilities and knew how to handle herself. The gentleman that owns the HOA management company is a family friend since childhood. And he went into the State Department and managed facilities. And he figured, well, if I can manage, you know, facilities in third world countries, managing HOAs is going to be a piece of cake. And he discovers, oh no, this may not be the case. So, so I had the idea for where I was going to get my conflicts. And I had the idea for who the 2 main character, well, there are actually three main characters. The heroine's mother is also a main character, and she's the reason that my heroine did retire at 50 and come here. She lives on an island in an HOA, and but she had breast cancer and was recovering, so Kylee, my heroine, came to help her initially, and then but the mother is also a curmudgeon, and basically, you know, tells the Kylee, okay, I'm well enough, get out, you know. So I'm ready to do my own thing again. So in this book, part of the tension for the main character, Kylee, is that her mother is one of the people that's being threatened for her stance on something in the HOA. So that gives you another, you know, tension thing, but the mother will stick around because she'll give some spice to the story as it goes along too. And I actually got the idea for the villain at, I helped organize something called the Writers Police Academy for 7 years. And Catherine Ramsland is a forensic psychologist who has interviewed all kinds of serial killers, and she does some very scary presentations. But Catherine is great, and I was talking with her at one of the conferences about something. I'm not going to do a spoiler on this. And her description in a class gave me the idea for the villain in this piece, that what the motivation would be for the murders and mindset. And I think that's something that, you know, writers are told often, but it's hard to remember sometimes, is that the villain in their mind is the hero of their story. They think they're doing the right thing. So you shouldn't you should consider that your villain story, they have real, in their mind, reasons for doing what they're doing, and they feel like they're in the right. So that makes it really interesting to look at your villains that way and see what motivates them and why they actually take the steps that they do and sort of veer off the path that we would expect. And I have a really good villain for this second book that I'm working on too. So,
don't you think they almost become real people?
oh, definitely, yeah. Yeah, I can, there is a bit of, a lot of my characters are blends of people that I've met, but then they take on their own personality. So, you know, you may start with the personality of someone that you know, and you say, well, he needs this characteristic or whatever. But then the actual end character is something quite different. And yes, you feel like you know them and what motivates him or her. So, although my husband tells me that all of my older characters have a bit of my Aunt Mary in them, no matter what. So, and I loved my Aunt Mary, but she could be sarcastic. So,
what's your writing routine like? Is any of your deadline-driven journalism experience filter into that, or is it completely different as a creative writer?
It's different, but what you learn, I've worked out of my house since 1975. So even when I was a partner in a company, marketing company, public relations company that specialized in doing freelance magazine articles for 10 years. And if you work at home, you know that, you know, these deadlines aren't going away. So, you know that you're going to put your bottom in the chair and you're going to write. And you have to have the discipline to do that. I actually like writing for traditional publishers because I do have a deadline. And I'm afraid that if I don't, I'll definitely take longer. Part of it, I'll spend more time on. It's a lot more fun than actually, getting down and doing the writing. So my deadline for the second book is December. And when I leave here, I am going to be pedal to the metal to get it in shape for my beta readers and critique partners to look at. So, and that's another thing that I think is helpful for keeping a routine. I have a number of beta readers, and I read their material and they read mine, but I have 4 critique partners that every 2 weeks we share 10 pages. So that gives you another commitment that you have that you're going to get them those 10 pages and you're going to read their 10 pages. So that's part of the routine for me that I keep with that. And if there's an extenuating circumstances, I mean, we're not flogged or anything, but we usually keep to it and honor that commitment. So.
Interesting, it's a good idea. Yeah, I have to admit, I have to share some, when talking about your critique people. I started writing a book, and it's kind of extemporaneous, originally it was pretty blah. But I shared it with a couple of people, and a couple of people went, wow, that sounds just like you, Bonnie, when you talk, and that's great, I want more. And I sent a copy of it to a relative.
Bad idea, usually.
And I said, and she responded back after she read it, and she said, well, I don't really know that much about writing, but it seems to me that you're supposed to have a beginning, a middle, and an end. And this just sounds like you're talking. And so I didn't say anything to her, but I hung up and I thought, okay. Yay.
Well, when I say you have to have critique partners, you need ones that are on the same page with you. That doesn't mean that they write in the same genre.
Yeah.
I have one critique partner who writes Regency romance, which is about as far as you can get from what I write. I have another critique partner that writes fantasy. Well, he writes a number of things, but fantasy is one of them. And I have another critique partner that writes suspense, and then I have one that writes funny suspense. So quite a different, but we all know what's good and can appreciate it, and where you're wandering off or having problems, and our rule is, well, not our rule, but any writer's rule is, if one person in the group tells you you've got a problem, you can go, well, that was just their take on it. But if 2 people tell you you've got a problem in that section, your solution may not be anything like what they've suggested the solution is, but you need to solve it. Whether it's a slow part of the book, or that, gee, I just don't like that character. Whatever it is, you need to fix it. And that is very helpful. I also belong to 2 book clubs, and that is also very helpful. If I were left to my own devices, I would read all thrillers and mysteries, but I'm not. So this forces me to read a wider variety. But what is most interesting to me is when I go to the book club meetings and the book club people start talking about, we always rate the books. I never have them read mine. We want to remain friends, but we rate the books, and then people say what they did and didn't like. And a lot of times I look at these books and I go, wow, they've jumped the point of view all over the place, they're head hopping, they're things a writer notices. They don't care. If the story is a good story, they like it. And, and I think that's something to always remember, that the story is the most important thing. And yes, there are a lot of things you can learn about craft in terms of point of view, deep point of view, voice, but it comes down to, if you don't have a good story, you don't have a good book. So I think that's something that when you go to book clubs, you can appreciate. And I would also recommend book clubs and they're fun to go visit. I probably visited, I don't know, 20 book clubs over time, and they're always fun to talk with them and see. It's amazing sometimes what they've gotten out of your book that you didn't plan on having in it. So things that they see that you may not have even thought about when you were putting in. So that makes it a lot of fun. So, and I'm sure that there are many of you may be in book clubs too. So if you are, I'll be glad to come speak.
Any reason to go back to the Lowcountry, right?
Yeah, well, it is a fair drive, but I do try to get down here fairly regularly. So, yeah. Any other questions, Jonathan?
Yeah, one more, sure. Since you led us into talking about telling good stories, and we're here in the Pat Conroy
Right.
Literary Center, I wonder if you might share a Pat Conroy story with us from your intersections with Pat.
Well, Pat lived just, I'm going to say 2 blocks from me on Fripp, not far at all. And after I learned that he lived there, we would see him walking to go swimming almost every night. And it was funny though, because Fripp Island was special in some ways, that nobody bothered him. It was like nobody went up and said, can you sign my book or autograph, or I want to talk to you about my manuscript or whatever. He was just a fellow resident. And he would always go to, well, not always, but he often went to, there was the equivalent of a 7-Eleven at the entranceway, and it had a rocking chair. And he would often go up there in the morning for coffee and just sit and chat with people. And I did do a magazine feature article on him. And I'm not sure which magazine it was for, maybe, I don't know, one of the island magazines. I really enjoyed the interview with him. We did it in his house. And what I was most astounded with is the fact that he did everything longhand, which I just could not believe. And but he was just a very gracious and outgoing person that would be glad. And I remember also when was welcoming its first female cadets, that we would have a lot more activity on our street than we ever had, because he would have parties for people that were supporting the female contingent of cadets arriving. And I do remember also, though, that when I went to do the interview at his house, I was told not to ring the bell because he couldn't hear it and to just walk in. So, and that was also part of the charm of Fripp, was that it was very relaxed. And, his house, like ours, was not on the beach. It was, his was on marsh, and just a very quiet, relaxed. And his relationship that he had with one of the people in the sales department that had been one of his coaches was very special too. And they often communicated. So, of course, I loved Pat Conroy's books. We were talking a little bit before the session started that I think my favorite is Prince of Tides, but there haven't been one that I haven't enjoyed. And also, I did really like The Water is Wide and wanted to go to and experience that. He was very generous with other writers, and I always hoped that by osmosis that I would get his gift for writing descriptive passages. It never quite happened, but it was great to know him. So that was fun. And it was also fun that when I lived on Fripp, they also did film one of his movies there, which was Prince of Tides. So you then got to see making size. So
Thank you for sharing that.
you're welcome. Any other questions? I have one person back here who told me that she was sure she knew who the villain was in my book until she didn't. So I was very pleased to hear that. So, and actually, when I was the person we will not name, I didn't actually think that that would be the primary suspect for many people, but you're not alone. So it is fun to have a cast of characters in there that can be potential suspects in a book. So
Yeah, there was somebody that I thought was gonna be the bad guy, and reminded me of somebody, Kira Buford.
well, I can assure you, none of these people. The only thing that you have is a danger when you're writing. And Pat Conroy did this too. I mean, he had a lot of the places, you knew where they were, but they were fictional. The only time that I remember him putting a real person in his book, and I'm trying to remember which book it was, but the woman that headed the turtle project on Fripp, he put her actual name in a book.
It's in
And-
music.
Yeah. And, you know, that was to me a first. I don't think that he ever did that with anyone else, but, you know, you try to make sure that it's difficult. I have, you know, the sheriff's department in this does not come off, I would say, well. And
Actual.
no. I know nothing about the sheriff's department in Beaufort County other than it exists.
That's pretty accurate.
So I always try to stay in the foreword or in somewhere in the author's notes that, you know, these are all fictional events and characters and, you
You're
know.
pretty close to home on that one. I can tell you from personal experience. Seriously, I used to be the director of the Rate Crisis Center and started the spouse abuse shelter here, so I had a lot to do with it.
Well, we're being recorded, so you may not want to
You
mention
need to cut
that.
that out. I could be arrested for no, sorry. I forgot about being incriminated on film.
We have viewers watching from Colorado and Kentucky. Multi-state audience already.
Probably nobody from law enforcement.
So that is one of the rules for writers, though. You never kill people or they don't die of food poisoning in any real restaurants or, you know. And as I was mentioning before we started, my biggest challenge, one of my big challenges with this book, because there are so many different HOAs that this individual manages, was coming up with names that I could use. Because every time I go, oh, that would be a good name, then I Google it, well, damn, that's already been taken. So it was really hard to find names, and some that I just couldn't believe. I think my original name for one of the islands was, well, I don't remember, but I Googled it and there was a little island in Virginia right on the border, and I went, really? So it was a surprise to me, but hopefully I have avoided any, and you know, if I haven't, it's not intentional. So
I wonder what people did for research before Google. I guess they went to the library.
yeah, well, and this makes it, one of the things that you have to remember though is everything on the internet needs to be double checked. This is not a story from my fiction writing. This is a story from when I was writing newsletters for a large corporation, and I will not say which one. And they wanted to do a feature on women entrepreneurs. So I interviewed a lot of people, I wrote this story, and I decided, ooh, I had to put in resources. So I went to government sources on the web and listed helplines, copied the numbers down exactly as they were on the web. Somebody had hacked one of the government websites and put in the helpline for women was a porn site.
No.
And so I learned from that lesson that if it's on the web, you double check it 2 or 3 different ways. Just because it's there doesn't mean that it's accurate. So that is a lesson that you need to learn. And I have, luckily that was discovered early and we reprinted. So, but it was a painful experience, so.
I'm sorry, back.
No. We have a quiet back row back there. You sure don't have any questions or? No? Okay.
Well, thank you so much, Linda.
Well, thank
This
you,
has
Jonathan.
been
It was
wonderful.
fun and I enjoyed meeting you folks and hope that you enjoy the book. And as I said, I'll be a bad penny that keeps turning up as long as this series is going to come to Beaufort and visit and visit. If you have any homeowner association stories, do email me.
And that's what's funny is because I live in a place that's an HMO. And ironically, when I was reading your stuff, I was staying with a lady who's 91 who'd broken her hip. And she lives out at Marsh Harbor, which I'm sure you're familiar with.
Yeah.
And I was listening to her and the people that live there talk about issues.
Right.
That, you know, and so the whole book really hit home with me because of so much personal experience that I've had in different situations with, you know,
Well,
homeowners
homeowner
associations.
associations are like small towns. And you can have things go along dandy for quite a while, and then you have either someone move to town that's a different idea of things. And the board changes, and overnight you can have a different
Yeah.
situation. And it's very personal to people because, you know, if you're told that you can't paint your front door this shade of red because it violates some paint requirement, or that, you know, you get a note on your mailbox that you really need to wash that mildew off your garage door, or, you know, they're talking about your home where you live. So people take it very personally.
Yeah.
And
I know when I bought my place, the gentleman who was in charge of it kept a pristine, it was absolutely pristine. And then he died and his niece took over. And the first thing she did was embezzle all the money that was supposed to cover the insurance to cover
Yeah.
anything that happened. So that's just one little teeny personal
Yeah.
thing that has happened to me.
Yeah.
And with my homeowners association.
Well, I think we're done anyway. So thank you again, Jonathan. And thank you all for coming. So-
Thank you.